All right, we are recording. Um, so uh, just to give a little background, back in January, my third son was informed that parents could come in and do career day on the 4th of March, and he had asked me to come in and talk about what I do to the students and the teachers because of the difference that my business has made in my personal life. And the it took me a little while to kind of construct a lesson that I could do in 15 to 20 minutes with the kids and talk about kind of what I do. And the way that I did this is I used the movie Kung Fu Panda. And so going into the classroom, I first asked how many kids know about the movie Kung Fu Panda. And I got a pretty good response. There's quite a few kids who knew about it. And the first thing I did is I started asking, like, who is Poe's dad? Just to, kind of get the kids familiar with it. And so Poe's dad is a goose. And his job is he owns a restaurant. He's a business owner or an entrepreneur. And he makes noodles. He makes dumplings. He creates those kind of foods in his restaurant. And then I next asked is what does Poe dream about? And if you may remember in the beginning of the film, Poe wakes up and he's dreaming about one thing. And that one thing is Kung Fu. Poe dreams about becoming a Kung Fu master. And for a big fat panda in this movie, that seems like something that is completely impossible and not capable. But what happens next is Poe learns that they're going to pick the Dragon Warrior that day. And so Poe goes up to the Jade Palace to find out who this person is going to be. And when he gets there, he can't get into the Jade Palace. The door gets closed in his face. He can't climb up to the window to see. And he's tried a couple different ways to get into the Jade Palace, and he's not able to. So what happens? Poe then gets the fireworks, straps them to the chair, and lights the fireworks lights the fireworks. And as you may remember from the film, he gets launched up into the air, way above the Jade Palace, and then the chair disintegrates, and he falls down into the courtyard of the Jade Palace. And what happens? Well, he wakes up and somebody's pointing at him. And that person is Master Oogway. He's a tortoise. He is one of the founders of Kung Fu. And what I relate is that there's a person in my life who's kind of like Master Oogway. And his name is Orrin Woodward. He's an internationally renowned leadership and management expert. He co-wrote a book with a man named Chris Brady called Launching a Leadership Revolution. And this book is written to help people develop leadership and leadership skills. And because of that, they have spoken in several countries and in several companies across the entire world. Well, Master Oogway, he doesn't train the Dragon Warrior. That's someone else's job. And that person is Master Shifu. And if you remember, Master Shifu is maybe he's a red panda, maybe he's a lemur. We were talking about it, and I don't remember what he is, but he's a great little character. And Master Shifu, the Master Shifu in my life is a guy named Mr. Jeremy Slade. And I get to work with him and talk with him on a regular basis. And he helps me to learn and understand leadership and to put it into practice. So my question then to the kids was, how does Master Shifu teach the kids or teach Poe Kung Fu? How does he do it? What method does he use? And if you may remember, is that Shifu goes into the kitchen and there's Po. He's kind of standing in the corner and he's eating some crackers or some cookies out of a container. And he's like, ooh, Master Shifu says, oh, I thought you might want to know that Monkey's almond cookies are up on the, I don't remember if he says beam or up on the shelf, but he tells him where they're at. And so he goes back around the corner and he hides, and then he waits, and then he comes around, and there's Po 10 feet off the ground doing a perfect split, eating Monkey's cookies. And he says, oh, don't tell him. And that's when Master Shifu knows how to train Po. And that's something that Mr. Slade does for me, is he helps me learn other people and how to work with them, how to connect with them and teach them leadership skills and help them go through some of our educational material or our training so that way they can become leaders in their own life and a leader in their family and in their community. So what do? They go out of the Jade Palace and they actually go up to where Master Oogway developed Kung Fu, and they start training. And how does Master Shifu train? He uses food. He has noodle soup. He has dumplings. And Po is supposed to take the food from Master Shifu so that he can eat it. And he uses it in all sorts of different ways. He uses food and fire at one point. The key is that Master Shifu takes the things that he knows about Po and he uses it to train Po in Kung Fu. And after the end of the training, you can see that they've developed a really good relationship. So what was the purpose of Po's training? It was to prepare him to fight somebody named Tai Lung. If you remember, he's the bad guy. He's a snow leopard. And Tai Lung is out to destroy Master Shifu and to take the Dragon Scroll. Do you guys remember what the Dragon Scroll is? The Dragon Scroll is a special document put there by Master Oogway in a Jade Palace. And Po is supposed to read it, and he's supposed to get something from it. Now, if you remember, he opens the Dragon Scroll, and what's in it? You guys remember?
Mirror.
It's blank. It's shiny. And he sees himself, and he's like, something's wrong, there's nothing here. And he gives it back to Master Shifu. Master Shifu like opens it, and he's like, what? I don't understand. And then Po and the Furious Five, they leave, and they go, and they're starting to leave. And what happens is Po goes to help his dad, the goose, pack up the restaurant and leave. And there's a point there where his dad, we actually don't ever get his name, but he says, do you know what the secret ingredient is to my secret ingredient soup? It's nothing. You just have to believe in something that make it special. And at this point, I stopped and I told the kids, I said, I want you to understand something, is that each and every one of you have talents and abilities that make you unique and special. Some of you may be the best swimmer of your age. You may go to the Olympics as a swimmer. Some of you might become a gymnast. Some of you might become a mathematician where you can do numbers in your head and do calculations really fast. And then I told them that sometimes I still use my fingers, especially if I'm thinking about something working, I got to do some math, some simple math, I'll use my fingers. But I talked about how each and every one of those kids is unique and special, and that they're here to do something amazing with their life. And I got to tell you that this was my favorite point of the whole day, is I got to stand in front of 8 classrooms and tell kids this, and tell them a truth, that they're unique and special. So Po realizes from this conversation with his dad, the goose, that he is something special, that for whatever reason, this panda who just learned Kung Fu is going to be the Dragon Warrior. And as we know from the movie, he defeats Tai Lung because He's different than the Furious Five. He's different from Shifu. He's different from Oogway. And that uniqueness, that special that makes Po who he is what allows him to win and to do something amazing. Now, what I love about these three movies is that in the first movie, Po learns that he's unique and special and that he can do something other people can't. In the second movie, Po learns to make peace with his past and his present. And because he does that, he gains inner peace and he becomes happy with who he is. And then what does he do is he uses that to hurl cannonballs back at the Peacock, which I don't remember his name, and defeat the Armada. And he saves the day. And then in the third movie, Po is told by Master Shifu that he needs to teach the Furious Five Kung Fu. And he's like, how am I supposed to teach them Kung Fu when they're Kung Fu masters already? What it was is that Po had to learn how to teach others to take their special traits and qualities and use that. If you remember the Panda Village, later in the movie, what happens? Po looks at what the kids can do and what the adults can do. And he takes that and he teaches them a little bit of Kung Fu so that they can defend their village against Kai, the bad guy who's coming to steal their chi. And by teaching them to be their best self, he creates a community that then saves Po in the end. And so what I teach people and what I help people understand is that as we grow leaders in leadership in a community, we grow more entrepreneurs. And we grow leaders and entrepreneurs in a community. They care about their community. They love the people they work with. They love the community, and they watch out for what other businesses are doing because they're looking for bad actors, and then they're watching what the government's doing. And when we have this set up and we develop this in our communities, we grow freedom. And that is one of the most amazing things that happens when we go on a pursuit of leadership and education. And we as individuals, we are completely unique. We have special talents and abilities that no one else has. And when we learn what those are and we put them to use, we can make a big impact in our communities. We are able to teach people and influence people in positive ways. And one of the ways that we do that we grow leadership in ourselves, is we read good books, we listen to audios and videos teaching us about leadership and business, and we then associate with other people who do the same thing. And what happens is that raises our level of leadership, that raises our talents and abilities, and it grows leadership in leaders. It grows entrepreneurship. And the more entrepreneurs we have, the more freedom we have. And if we look at American history, we can see that in the time of the founding fathers, we had men and women who had their own businesses, many of them. Sometimes they were a lawyer, but they owned their own practice. Sometimes they were gentlemen farmers like President Washington. Sometimes they were teachers and they ran their own school, or they taught in a community where they were a community leader. And those men and women of that era created so much freedom that they could not stand attacks put on them by Parliament. That is one of the most amazing things about America, is that we were created as a country of freedoms. So I expanded on a little bit about what I talked about with those young men and young women, but I was so excited to do this talk that I came out of it, and I shared with Mr. Slade what I had done. I sent him a little video clip, and he ended up sending that on up through our leadership team, and it went all the way up to Mr. Woodward. And then he ended up sharing that with all of the community that I'm a part of, the life community that I'm a part of, because who knows what kind of impact that message is going to have for other people. Because as we grow and change, as we develop and become the best version of ourselves, what we do is we create a circle of influence around us, just like Stephen Covey talks about in 7 Habits. And as we grow that circle of influence, we grow trust. And as we grow trust, we're able to influence people that are friends of friends, that are business partners of business partners, and we are able to build and strengthen our communities. And that's one of the things that as I have learned to, and grown to understand what a community means, why building and strengthening communities are important, I have loved more and more what I do, because it makes a big difference, not only in my own home with my wife and with my kids. It's made a big impact at work, and it's made an impact in my community, where people have come to trust me and seek my advice and counsel because I have something special in me, and they see that. And then I can find what's special in them and lead them and teach them and share with them.